Malignant is without a doubt the worst movie I saw in 2021, and there was a lot of competition. Malignant is such an awkward viewing experience because this one movie is trying to do so many things at once, and yet fails at every single one of them. Every time this movie tried to be scary, it just made me laugh. And every time this movie tried to be funny, all I felt was pain. There were also so many plot holes that every time I tried to find an answer to one of them, I just ended up finding a bunch more. And yet somehow there are people that like this movie. Into the rabbit hole we go. So the movie starts off with a scientist named Dr. Weaver talking to a camera. She's basically just like, I'm doing crazy experiments and it's like super dangerous and stuff. I don't know why, but movie scientists explaining fake movie science is always really funny to me. Is it just me?
To do it with ECT, but electroshock had no effect on him. It's like he was drinking the electricity and controlling our machine.
None of this means anything. So then some guy comes in and he's like, Dr. Weaver, a science experiment named Gabriel has escaped the lab. Obviously, she seems very concerned about this. Well, you know what, lady? I'm no scientist or anything, so maybe I'm not an expert, but maybe your science experiment wouldn't have escaped if you were doing your job instead of vlogging. Something you should know about this movie is that every death is unintentionally hilarious. So Dr. Weaver manages to tranquilize Gabriel, and then this cheesy as fuck Goosebumps level intro plays? So now we get introduced to our main character, Maddie, who is pregnant. Do you want other character traits? Well, you don't get any. She's a pregnant woman with no personality. Deal with it. She gets home from work and sees her husband Derek watching TV in bed. He says this to her.
You know, if you've got all this pain, maybe you shouldn't be going to work.
Aw, what a kind and supportive guy.
Maybe you need to stop getting pregnant.
Oh. Yeah, he's basically the standard cliche abusive husband guy.
Doing what? Madison, tell me. Are you saying this keeps happening because bitch?
Ah yes, he is so concerned about the well-being of his wife and child that he jabs her in the stomach and slams her head into a wall.
Bitch!
Can we take a minute to recognize how ridiculous this house is? Why do so many horror films that take place in modern day have these mansions that look like they were built in the 1700s? Whenever we see an exterior shot of the house at night, it's just surrounded by a hilarious amount of fog. They want the two of them and a baby to live in this house that has like 17 rooms in it and a massive yard that's perfectly trimmed. And this movie wants us to believe that they're struggling financially? Look, I know that this is none of my business, but they probably wouldn't have financial issues if they didn't spend all their money on spooky fog. Okay, so now we have our first spooky scene. So Derek is sleeping on the couch, you know, that thing you do after a long hard day of beating your wife. He wakes up because there's a spooky noise inside of the spooky kitchen. Every single attempt to scare you in this scene is just embarrassing. Oh no, not common household items.
Like sucking dick and cock. Like
You ruined my life. Well, I think they're trying to prove what a person is. What I think we're doing. Oh, by chopping ourselves balls off.
So this entity that we assume is Gabriel kills Derek in this comically over-the-top way. So boring protagonist wakes up and realizes that the back of her head is bleeding. Even though she's a nurse, I guess she sees no reason to go to the hospital over this. She goes downstairs and sees Derek's body with Gabriel next to it. Gabriel chases Maddie and it just looks really stupid and nothing about it is scary. Alright, now we get our first scene where the movie just turns into an episode of Law & Order. You see, this movie has 3 modes. There's so bad it's good horror mode, second there's standard cable network detective procedural drama, and the third mode is batshit insanity. The first 2/3 of this movie bounce back and forth between horror mode and detective mode, and then the last third of the movie is basically just batshit insanity. Don't worry about that yet, we'll get there. But yeah, the procedural detective scenes are awful in a very different, less fun way than the horror scenes. The horror scenes are embarrassing in a hilarious kind of a way, but the detective scenes are embarrassing in a really boring way. When the movie fails at horror, it's hilarious, but when it fails at Law & Order, it's just painfully boring. The next morning, Maddie wakes up in the hospital and she learns that she has miscarried. Alright, this is great. Now Annabelle Wallis can try to act. Come on, Annabelle, this is your big Oscar moment. Amazing. So the cops come in and start asking Maddie some questions. For some reason, Maddie's sister's wearing a princess outfit, and she tells the cops she's wearing it because she performs at kids' birthday parties. This never comes up again in the whole movie. It just distracts us during this scene and then never comes back. It looks like when you play a video game and they let your custom character be in the cutscene. Why did they put this in the movie? But hey, at least in this scene we learn that Maddie has had 3 miscarriages in her life. Also, this scene ends with the cops suspecting that Maddie killed her husband. Ooh, intrigue. So Maddie's sister takes her home and tells her that Maddie's free to stay at her place, and Maddie says no for some reason.
You don't have to stay here, you know?
I know, but this is my home.
Why would you want to stay in this house by yourself? It is massive, and while living here, you've had 1 abusive husband, 4 miscarriages, 7 bedroom lamps, 0 personality, and 1 ominous cloud of spooky fog. Then at night, Maddie's hanging out in her room, and this happens. This obviously scares her, so she goes downstairs and, as any person would, starts closing all 47 of her windows. This is one of the ugliest shots I have ever seen. And you know it's only in the movie because the director thought it looked so cool. You guys want to see the fakest jump scare ever? Oh, come on. Next, we cut to a scene of a woman giving a tour of Seattle's underground. Now, when I first saw this movie, I seriously thought this woman was our main character because they just look so much alike. But now I know that this was actually a completely different woman. I don't know if they just picked 2 actresses who looked too similar, or if I was too drunk on my first viewing. Probably some combination of the 2, to be honest. While she's down here, we get another spooky scene of Gabriel chasing her down. Once again, every attempt this movie has to scare you is unintentionally hilarious. I can't get over how Gabriel just looks like edgy red guy from Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. It's also really funny that after Gabriel kidnaps this woman, he puts duct tape over her mouth to stop her from talking. This is such a movie pet peeve of mine because in real life, duct tape doesn't even work like that.
Duct tape, yummy.
I have a question. Why does the horror in this horror film suck as bad as it does? Given how hilariously terrible all the horror scenes films are, they have to have been directed by someone who's never directed horror before, right? Well, what should surprise you is that this film was actually directed by one of the most influential horror directors of the last 2 decades, James Wan. Here's a mini Director Detective episode 1.5 for you guys. James Wan's directorial debut was Saw in 2004, which was a very innovative film that managed to take a seriously small budget and do everything he could with it. Saw was by no means a great movie, but it managed to be so effective with audiences that it took a $1.2 million budget and turned it into an over $100 million profit. Saw is essentially a household name at this point. After that, James Wan directed Insidious, which I have not seen, but from what I hear, it's a slightly above average horror film. But the film that really turned him into one of the most successful directors of our time was The Conjuring in 2013. It's a very cliche horror film. If you've ever seen a horror film before, you've basically seen this one. But at least it manages to take these cliches in somewhat of a charming way. It managed to make over $300 million, which made it one of the highest grossing horror films ever, and it spawned its own cinematic universe. Even though I have mixed feelings about the quality of James Wan's films, it's obvious that he's a talented artist who always tries to do something in his own style. But in 2015, his career completely changed, because he ended up directing the 7th Fast and Furious film, which is weird. But hey, he did a good job at making a mindlessly entertaining blockbuster. Furious 7 is a really fun movie. And then he made a sequel to The Conjuring, which is one of the most boring, forgettable, and cliche horror films I've ever seen. And then James Wan directed Aquaman, which is more in line with Furious 7 than any of his other movies. It seems to me that the direction of his career has been away from his horror roots and more towards campy, shut-your-brain-off action movies, which I actually think works, because I definitely prefer his cheesy action films to any of his horror films. Also, it seems like each one of his horror films just got progressively worse than the last one. I just feel like the implication of his career trajectory really hurt Malignant in a lot of ways. It feels like he's trying to go back to his horror roots and make something scary, but then his action director instincts keep getting in the way and telling him to constantly remind the audience that he made Aquaman by giving us these actiony James Wan shots. The conflicting tones just come off as laughable. I genuinely think that at this point, he's forgotten how to make a horror movie. Hey Frankie, what was that shitty James Wan movie we watched?
Saw. Aquaman.
Maligma balls! Got him! Then we see Maddie doing laundry in her bedroom while listening to music on an old-timey radio, even though she has an iPhone for some reason. She walks down the stairs and then this happens. She sees a screaming woman running through her house and just completely underreacts. Yeah, I know a guy might be trying to kill me right now, but I'm sure this screaming woman running through my house was just my imagination. Then the movie uses this CGI nightmare to show us that Maddie can actually see visions of Gabriel killing people, and that the screaming woman was actually just a vision the whole time. The scene of Gabriel killing this woman is so stupid looking and not scary at all. And then we get 2 more boring detective scenes. Hooray! Next we get another laughable scene where Gabriel kills one of the doctors who worked on him. So first the doctor's on his phone and his phone call gets disconnected. I guess Gabriel can disconnect phone calls? Whatever, don't think about it because the window's open and there's a very spooky puddle of water on the floor and it is very, very scary. This guy steps right on top of the puddle like a complete dipshit, sees a trail of water into his closet, and then turns the light on and boom! Nothing. Guys, this scene is a little too scary. I might have to end the video. Oh my god. That scare is literally just for the audience because the character doesn't even notice it. I guess the point of that scare is literally just for the people in the theater to say, "Oh my god. Was that Gabriel?" Then Maddie astral projects to see this guy's death after a terrible CGI transition. This guy's death is so fake looking and absolutely hilarious. Also, this is just an observation I've made, but I'm pretty sure that James Wan has a fetish for screaming women. I could be wrong. I can't prove anything. It is just a hunch. But the amount of screaming women in this movie is a bit excessive. Also, his wife is in this movie.
James and I had always wanted to create something together, and so I started pitching him some ideas. We found this little seed.
He's right behind you! Run! So then Maddie and her sister go to the cops, and they tell the cops that she's a psychic, and that the cops need them to help with the investigation. Obviously, any reasonable person would just assume that they're drug addicts or crazy people. I love how Regina just calls them crazy to their faces.
This time across from the Silver Cup Apartments. I googled it.
Great. Wikipedia Brown here just solved the case.
Despite the main characters obviously being insane, Detective Shaw takes their word for it and goes to check out the apartment where they claim a dead body is. Those two nice crackheads told us they're psychic and there's a dead body here. We better pull out our guns and break into this apartment. But hey, they find a dead body, so I guess the police breaking and entering an apartment without consent or a warrant is totally fine. So then Maddie goes to the bathroom to wash her face off. She sure is lucky the water didn't wash her makeup off or anything. So then Gabriel calls her, and for some reason her phone displays TV static? As if phones do that? I thought Gabriel communicated through speakers. Why is that this time he's calling someone?
Hi sisters, James Wan here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. For today's video intro, I want to...
You would think a phone call with the villain would be a great time to show off Maddie's personality or something, but no, she's still boring, generic movie protagonist 894. Then Maddie asks her mom about Gabriel, and it turns out that Maddie had an imaginary friend named Gabriel when she was a kid. And Gabriel made her misbehave or something. Also, one of her aunts had a miscarriage around her at this time. Next, Detective Shaw finds the videotapes with Dr. Weaver's vlogs on it. This prompts him to Google one of the doctor's names, and for some reason, the first Google result is the man's address? I guess Google's out here doxing scientists for some reason. The other doctor conveniently lives only a few blocks away from where Detective Shaw is right now. Awesome. So Shaw rushes over there to this guy's apartment, and then, oh no, Gabriel already killed him. And then double oh no, Gabriel's still in the apartment. Yep, this movie expects us to believe that Detective Shaw just so happened to discover the existence of this other doctor, who just so happens to live really close to the police department, who just so happened to be murdered by Gabriel a few minutes before Detective Shaw even gets to the apartment. I'm going insane trying to follow the plot of this movie. Can we take a second to acknowledge how ridiculous this fight is? Gabriel has super strength whenever he fights anyone, but now that he's fighting Detective Shaw, Gabriel's just weaker than him? Why? Why run away? You have super strength. Just stab him. Yeah, okay, Gabriel can kick a hole through a brick wall, but he can't overpower this twink? Also, Gabriel just looks so stupid when he's diving off the side of the building. How are we expected to take this seriously? Oh no, he's getting away. I better break my spine real quick. The scene ends with Gabriel getting away. What an embarrassing excuse for a chase scene. Maddie's sister has a genius idea of having a psychic come in to hypnotize Maddie into remembering her suppressed memories. Yes! Psychic scenes are always amazing in horror movies. Always! So Maddie remembers all these suppressed memories from when she was a child. Back then, her imaginary friend Gabriel convinced her to cut a piece of cake, and then after another awful CGI transition, we see that she's actually going to cut her pregnant mother's stomach, and that's why her birth parents abandoned her. Gabriel, look, I get that you're pro-choice and everything, but isn't this a bit excessive? After that, Maddie has a panic attack, and watching Annabelle Wallis try to act is just adorable.
Stop this! Get her out! Get her out! Stop this! Right now! Her forehead! You will...
Gee, I wonder why this actress has only ever been in garbage before. At this point, Regina's just about as done with this movie as I am.
The killer said he was Gabriel. My Gabriel.
Wait, are you saying that the killer is your imaginary friend?
Look, I know I've been ranting about these awful special effects and camera tricks, but I want to explain that my issue with these things aren't that they just look bad. It's also that it ruins any sense of tension that the movie's trying to build up. People complain that there are hundreds of low-budget, garbage horror films released every year. This is true, but there has to be a reason why horror films can be effective on a low budget. Otherwise, so many of these films couldn't be profitable, right? There has to be something unique about the horror genre that makes it easier to be effective with a low budget. Otherwise, you'd be seeing $2 million superhero films every weekend. Well, here's my take. I think horror films can effectively create a sense of immersion for audiences with a lower budget than other genres. In order for a horror film to be effective, you really need to be so immersed in what you're watching that you completely forget that you're even watching a movie. When a low-budget horror film has only a few characters and primarily takes place in one setting, they can create a realistic environment that anyone can relate to. The film can really just follow a small family inside of one house, and magically everyone watching the film can relate to that setting because most people experience that every day. Take this familiar setting and add some spooky shit and boom, you have an effective horror film without spending much money at all. Malignant has a budget of $40 million. That is a huge budget by horror film standards, and I think that having that much of a budget for this particular story really hurt the film. By showing us these flashy visuals, it immediately sucks us out of the experience and immediately reminds us that we are not in fact watching real events and that we're watching a movie that was made by a director who told CGI artists to make this monstrosity. It ruins any sense of tension that the movie was trying to go for. Having shit like this in a movie like Aquaman and Furious 7 is actually a great way to make the movie more exciting. But by using it in a horror film, it just ruins any atmosphere that the film's trying to go for. I'm not trying to say that a horror film cannot be good on a high budget. What I'm trying to say is that James Wan just didn't use the money to make this horror film effective. Anyways, back to the movie. So this woman who Gabriel kidnapped is now escaping, and this moment is so funny that I really just need to show it to you. So you mean to tell me that this kidnapped woman has been held in Maddie's attic the whole time and none of the cops, Maddie, or her sister ever noticed? Are you kidding me? Anyways, now the cops have found Gabriel's murder weapon inside of Maddie's attic, and they're totally convinced that Maddie kidnapped this woman and killed her husband. That took you long enough, but okay.
Put her in jail! Now! Put her in jail! Put her in jail!
At this point, when I was watching the movie for the first time, I was absolutely convinced that they were going to do the cliche plot twist where the main character has multiple personality disorder or something. I was wrong. Kind of. You'll see what I mean. Anyways, Gabriel decides now's a good time to call Detective Shaw, whose phone also displays TV static. The dialogue here feels like it's out of a Metal Gear cutscene.
Who are you, Gabriel?
I'm a figment of her imagination.
Oh wait, you gotta listen to this garbage.
Ask her what she used to call me.
The devil.
Maddie's sister finds the psych ward and the editing is just awful here. Look, she's about to pull up to the building and it's broad daylight, and then she parks her car and it looks like it's in the middle of the night. What the fuck happened? And then she parks her car like 6 inches away from the side of a cliff, and they add this weird emphasis to it for some reason, so I assumed it was foreshadowing something. But this never comes up again. Was the scene removed? How did they fuck up a simple establishing shot? Also, Maddie gets thrown in a jail cell, which is like comically massive. Like, this cell fits dozens of women in it. Why does this woman look like she's designed after a 1970s prostitute? While in the psych ward, Maddie's sister finds a bunch of old videotapes. It's at this point when the movie devolves into complete batshit insanity for the rest of the movie. Big reveal time, everybody, because this movie gets a good old-fashioned M. Night Shyamalan plot twist. So it turns out I was wrong. Maddie does not have multiple personality disorder. What actually happened is way more insane than that. So you might as well just watch it for yourself.
You
Do you have a cigarette? Do you have a cigarette? Come on, someone else.
Yup, Gabriel is a parasitic twin attached to the back of Maddie's head.
See? There was a twist.
I guess he was able to take control after Maddie's husband smashed her skull. And of course, James Wan has a character look into the camera and explain the twist to the viewers, just like M. Night Shyamalan did in The Village.
It's a parasitic twin. When two embryos develop in the womb.
I have no fucking clue what you just said, but hell yeah, man, I'm gonna speak my truth.
This twist just opens up so many plot holes that it's actually kind of impressive. How was Gabriel chasing Maddie for 2 whole scenes at the beginning of the movie? Was she just chasing herself? How was Gabriel able to break all the bones in Maddie's arms and legs out of place and then able to just perfectly put them back together later? Why did Gabriel's fridge open up by itself? Why did his blender turn on by itself? Why did his couch cushion just adjust itself? Why did I watch this movie 3 times? So these women in prison start beating up Maddie for seemingly no reason, and boom, Gabriel shows up, and the movie just turns into Aquaman. She absolutely demolishes all these women. This cop gets himself killed and gives Gabriel his keys like a complete dipshit. Then Gabriel has another fight scene with the other cops. This fight is so nonsensically stupid that I kind of respect it. All the cops for some reason can't shoot straight. Every cop just gets as close as humanly possible to try to shoot Gabriel for some reason. At one point, Gabriel rips one of the cops' arm off and chucks it at another cop. Also, this scene has the funniest chair throw ever.
Okay, listen. Gabriel is inside of Madison.
At this point in the video, you might be surprised to hear that there are actually a lot of people who think that this movie is good, which is fine. Look, I don't really care if other people have a different opinion than me. I've seen some positive reviews of this movie, and people usually defend it by saying that this movie is self-aware and campy and a secret comedy rather than an incompetent horror film. The defenders of this movie will say that the first 2/3 of the movie will try to be a run-of-the-mill horror film so that it'll surprise you in the last third when the movie turns into a comedy. I disagree. After watching every single interview with James Wan about Malignant and behind the scenes videos that I can find, I firmly believe that he wasn't going for comedy in the way that people think he was. In a vast majority of these interviews, he really just talks about how he wanted to make a horror mystery film with a unique spin on it. Which, yeah, I do believe that he accomplishes that.
I really made this movie for the horror fan that's inside me. Malignant really touches on lots of little things that I love from, you know, the entire spectrum of the horror genre. So there's a bit of mystery, there's a bit of creature feature monster aspect to it, you know, there's a serial killer aspect to it.
In all the interview footage that I found, I could really only find one clip where he even mentions humor in the film, and it's really just in reference to the detective characters.
Overall, the theme, the subject matter, and the visual are very dark. We just felt like we needed a little bit of levity, and we felt like these cops, you know, can kind of bring a jaded, cynical sense of humor to the film.
Yeah, I agree, Regina is really funny, but I don't see how Detective Shaw was meant to be comedic at all. Even Regina is real Deadpool-ass writing. It's just doing the Deadpool thing, where you joke about the bad aspects of the script. If you're self-aware enough to make fun of the fact that the movie lazily relies on horror cliches, why can't you also be self-aware enough to fix the bad shit about the movie that you're making fun of? Personally, I think James Wan accidentally made a so bad it's good horror film, and so many people like James Wan and just assume that it must have been on purpose. James Wan is a talented guy, but it's not like he's some filmmaking genius or anything. His movies before this have ranged from pretty good to pretty bad. Also, the movie is listed as a horror film and a mystery film on every major film website. Look, like this movie all you want, I'm not gonna try to stop you. but I just think that it's a really lazy way to defend a movie by hearing any criticism of it and saying that it was all done on purpose. If that's the case, then I could just use that argument to defend any other so bad it's good horror films. Ah yes, the dialogue in Wish Upon was clearly campy and self-aware, and you just didn't get it. The acting in Black Christmas 2019 was terrible on purpose, as an avant-garde way to symbolize the oppression we all face under capitalism, obviously. And even if this movie was campy and self-aware, a vast majority of my criticisms are still valid. The acting is still terrible, the CGI is still ugly, the editing is still bad, the music is still obnoxious, the dialogue is still terrible, the main character is still flat as a cardboard, and there are still tons of plot holes. Alrighty, time to finish up this piece of shit. So Maddie's sister goes to the hospital room where that woman from the attic is being held. Turns out that this woman is Maddie's real biological mother. So Maddie's sister is trying to save her, and then, oh no, Gabriel shows up. Gabriel has an emotional talk with his mommy. At this point, we don't give a shit about either of these characters, so honestly, who even cares?
Please forgive me. I should never have given you away. You were my son.
Then Gabriel kills both of them, and then plot twist, Maddie made Gabriel hallucinate? Sure, whatever, I just want to go to bed. Maddie then seals Gabriel away in her mind, the same way that Naruto seals up the nine-tailed fox inside of his mind. I really hate the way that Maddie defeats Gabriel. She doesn't defeat him by going through any character arc or anything, she just magically defeats him at the last possible second before Gabriel kills her sister for seemingly no reason. This is such a boring main character. She has no personality and doesn't even have a character arc or learn anything. At least Mark Wahlberg fixed his marriage at the end of The Happening. I read a comment that said that Maddie found the strength to defeat Gabriel because her sister told her that Gabriel caused her miscarriages.
Madison, he killed your babies! He was the cause of your miscarriages! He was feeding off of your fetuses to build himself back up!
Look, I don't know if this was James Wan's intent or not, but if it was, it kind of makes the scene worse. Yeah, I know that Gabriel has killed like dozens of innocent people and is about to kill my sister and mom and stuff, but now that I know that he caused my miscarriages, I think it's time that I do something about this. Alright, I get that Gabriel was feeding off of Maddie's pregnancies, which led to her having miscarriages. But what did Gabriel have to gain by making Maddie kill other people's fetuses? What did that accomplish? What a fucking dumpster fire. In conclusion, I think James Wan was a talented horror director who made some schlocky action films and has now completely forgot how to make a horror movie. The result of this is an embarrassing movie that had me laughing at it way more than laughing with it. But after all this, if you still like this movie, that is completely fine. Despite me ripping into it, I actually have a level of respect for this movie and James Wan and any movies and TV that I've gone to the lengths of making a video on before. The reason is that this film is a film made by a creative artist who brought his vision to life. This wasn't a studio-mandated cynical piece of crap like The Conjuring 3. It's a passion project that just didn't work for me. If you still love this movie, then who really cares what some YouTuber says about it? Enjoy the things you enjoy. You don't need other people on the internet to agree with you for you to feel valid. Do I hate this movie? No, I actually think that it's really fun to watch in a room full of drunk people, and that has to count for something. Let me know what you thought of this movie and subscribe if you like this video. Also drop a like on this video, it would really mean a lot to me and help this video get pushed by the YouTube algorithm to more people. Thank you, goodbye.